Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Just Unsecure, series on information and cybersecurity matters as it relates to, Africa. Well, I'm BA Babs, and my co-host is OO. And today we're going to be talking to you about vulnerability management in the cloud. And back today, we're going to be talking about vulnerability management in the cloud. Before I start, I'd like to say thank you all for everyone who subscribed. And summer, people have been saying, where is the next video? This is the video we're bringing up to you guys now. We had a great summer. Yeah, so let's get back straight to the show today. Vulnerability management in the cloud. From my perspective, it's a new area for everyone, and vulnerability management is actually key. If you have on premises, most of the time, vulnerability management is done in a traditional way. So you have your servers, you scan, you go through that. It's your servers, your environment. But now you're moving to the cloud. It's not your environment, it's your applications running, and it's another environment, another physical location. And this is where you have to now know the processes and things you have to put in place. And that's what we're going to talk about today, vulnerability management in the cloud. From my own perspective, the first thing I always tell everyone is, and if you've seen all the videos, we say it all the time, know what you have in the cloud, asset inventory, know everything that belongs to you. If you don't know if you don't know what is in the cloud, you cannot know what to scan and what is out there. So for me, the first thing first is know what you own. And some cloud provides a way of you to do asset inventory. So you're able to log in and see all the assets that have been provisioned to you, instances that have been spun up. So take 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 a key out of that and just try and use as much features as the cloud provider provides to you to be able to know your assets and be able to tie that down. So for me, the first thing key, as always, is to know your assets. I don't know about you. What was your take on that?
One of the things that is important is also trying to get what does your tooling looks like as well. You have to
Yeah,
pick and choose between what your cloud provider offers and what you have.
absolutely.
So some people like to carry their tools from home premise. They're used to all the vulnerability scanning tools, operational testing tools that they currently own. Or in an hybrid environment, they currently have a lot of things on premise and they have other things in the cloud. And they're like, why can't we just consolidate our vulnerability management program? So some people lean towards that. Whereas some other guys
Yeah,
like, yeah, why can't we just go to the cloud tooling? Whatever is offered in the cloud for us to use that. So you have to map it. What does your current cloud
yeah.
provider, which is normally called CSP, offers, and probably what you have, and if you probably want to take one or the other. That can be a critical decision point.
Yeah, that was a fair point. Another, I think for me is looking at different attack vectors that can come through the cloud, or should I say, looking at vulnerabilities that are deemed 0 day, or testing some form of 0 day response plan. So yeah, I think that would be a main focus, because if you look at the cloud, you and knowing that the cloud is not necessarily your own, should I say, the underlying infrastructure is not yours. So what you need to do, from my own perspective, is ensure you have like a response plan for things like 0 day
Hmm.
attack. Zero day, to those who don't know, are kind of malicious vulnerabilities that occur on that day, whereby people are not aware of any mitigation or patches. And the worst case is those 0 day are actually exploitable. When they're exploitable, that is actually worse. That's what we call a 0 day attack. That means there's no patch, No research is actually being done. Someone just found the loophole
It
that
just showed up
nobody
on the
else.
screen. It's like, oh no, what can I do with
Exactly.
this?
So from a cloud perspective, you should be training your staff or training the security team. What will you do when there's a 0 day attack? You should have processes in place that says, okay, this is a 0 day attack. Are you going to stop production? That should be a plan. If it's a production environment that you're making money, you have to think twice.
Hmm.
So is it something that management will support you on that? Remember, that's why it's always good to have that plan in place, because when you do shut down a production system that is making money, you want to be 100% sure that you followed all due process and the plan that you've laid out for a 0 day attack. So for me, having a plan for 0 day is something I highly recommend anyone doing vulnerability management in the on the cloud.
Fantastic. I think what you mentioned now, takes me back to responsibilities, roles, and responsibility.
Absolutely.
You know, you
Absolutely.
need to know where the buck stops. You need to know where who needs to do what. 0 day response, or even patching, or the business owner. Because in IT, we
Yeah.
always think like, yeah, vulnerability assessment is just a security kind of requirement. But when it comes to the business, there are obvious business owners that needs to know
Mhm.
when you are doing such a program. And even if you need to bring down that particular solution or ram it, you need to be able to warn them ahead. Say, okay, there's going to be a period of unavailability for this because of the activity that we're trying to carry out. So roles and responsibility needs to be, and this needs to be extended to even different kind of workloads as well. There are some that we call pets, and there's some that we call cattle, right? So you
Yeah.
need to be able to say, oh, this guy is just our native guy. This particular set of servers or application, they are just our normal native ones. We just treat them as we treat them on premise, or these ones are treated with some kind of automation, which is called cattle.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one needs to be able to level up on that, and who is responsible for those kind of applications. So I believe that's
Yeah.
also critical.
Yeah, that's one very good point. Clear roles and responsibility, like you mentioned. I think another thing that aligns with that is people do vulnerability scanning, but they don't check the reports. So if you're not doing a review of the report on a regular basis, then you're actually losing the point. You should be able to say, okay, there's no point doing a scan every week
Yeah.
and nobody's patching or nobody's reporting. If you're going to be doing something every week, then you must have a process that ensures that whatever you find out is being resolved. You must have SLAs to say, okay, critical must be resolved on so days,
Yeah.
high must be resolved on so days. But the whole point is somebody must be reviewing the vulnerability report that comes up. I always recommend, depending on your infrastructure, I say, look, sometimes some people do weekly. I say bi weekly or monthly. The reason being, it gives you a timeline to be able to process what has been scanned, do the reporting, do the finding, and be able to follow up. But if you do it weekly, it's like, you're churning the same problem over and over and over again, and people might not say, look, you just scanned it last week, why are you disturbing me again? I'm yet I'm still reviewing the findings, especially if it's a medium. But if it's a critical, you need a response. You need someone to provide you updates on why this critical vulnerability exists in your infrastructure. So my whole point is, ensure, especially in a cloud environment, you are regularly reviewing your vulnerability reports. Without that, you as well just being blind to the problem.
And also to add one point as well, still on this report, which is critical. One of the downfall is you do a vulnerability assessment, you send the report out, and someone tells you, oh, we've closed that. How do you want to know what was closed last time and what was detected if you run it the next week or whatever your cycle is? So knowing your report will clearly show what has been movement or progress from the last time you ran that vulnerability assessment. And for us, a security team, we are not reporting to IT, so to say.
Yeah,
There are more bigger stakeholders that need to see how your vulnerability assessment program is going on. So, and don't forget, audit is even coming. So, you really want a good report.
absolutely.
And the last thing, also why that reporting is critical, is also the coordination between the blue team and so-called the red team. So everybody sees it like, oh, this is what is clearly your vulnerability status and how to
Yeah,
really map on it. So it's not just a report for IT. It's not a report for security alone. There's a lot of things
I,
that's connected to it.
and it's good you actually mention the audit perspective. I think that's where the tying in into ensuring that you also have like a non-compliance plan. So when people are not compliant to you requesting them to either patch or get a form of response, again it ties all the way to my first statement, having a plan for everything you do. So if you have a plan for non-compliance, you should be able to say, okay, for non-compliance, this is what I need to escalate to. For non-compliance, these are the stakeholders that needs to be informed. You should be able to have a plan that states, okay, these are things that can be blacklisted. These are things that are whitelisted. These are things that should occur when there's a critical incident. So again, having an overall plan for non-compliant issues within your cloud environment, I think is an added advantage for you to take note of. So always have a plan for everything that is not compliant, and please always have a way to report it or escalate them.
Security
From my yeah,
completely. Yeah, that's
absolutely, man.
and when you mentioned compliance, it rang a bell in my head like, oh, compliance is necessary. Absolutely. You need to take care of that. But again, how do you classify different kind of workloads to their level of compliance, right? I
Mm-hmm.
know some workloads, for example, they are for PCI DSS. Some workloads they are for
Yep,
ISO. Some workloads are for
yep,
FedRAM. So some workloads
yeah,
are for
exactly.
different things. So the level, that means the level of compliance of this workload differs. So you need to be able to identify each of your assets, how they need to be addressed.
Okay.
And again, when you look at it, some are containers, some you are run with Terraform scripts, some are just
Mm,
native kind of application or custom applications, some are containerized. So you need to know what kind of level of security or vulnerability that you need to run against a container asset compared to a normal VM. So, or
exactly.
for some that are workload for ISO, some that are for workload for PCI DSS, and so on and so forth. They must be able to address that for different
Yeah.
assets.
And talking about maybe another follow up is ensuring you have kind of I think you mentioned it already. Did you mention the patching tooling and having if
Yes.
not, okay, yeah. So I think that's one thing, and maybe I should just buttress on it as well. Having an automated way to patch and also support your patching system. And by this I mean you should be able to tell, or should I say, granularly tie your environment to the disk space, the access. And when I say disk space, don't get me wrong, because sometimes when you want to patch, you kind of have you need more spaces to do the patching. So sometimes you request more spaces. So yeah, but at least it allows you to know, and it helps in your costing as well. If you say, okay, this is what the disk space I need for operating, but if I'm going to patch, I'll need this amount of this space because it takes more space to patch. Another area you look at, I think, access control when you're doing vulnerability management, because that's key. Because when you're doing vulnerability management, you want to be sure who is scanning first and who is going to be doing the patching as
Mm-hmm.
well. So access management from that perspective is very key when you're doing vulnerability management. I will tie it into the patch tooling and support. So that's why I put access management there, because it's very critical to understand that, okay, somebody is going to have to patch what you've identified as a vulnerability, and more or less people that want to patch will also request admin access, and might not necessarily be the people that do to day operations. Might be sysadmin that need to come in just to do that patch. Again, you need to have all this from a security perspective, not generally just vulnerability, but from a security perspective, because you need to also be aware of who is going to do a patch and who has access to the environment that you're scanning. So yeah, like I said, I jumped off the bandwagon, but it's all security related.
So
Any other one?
all of these points are critical because sometimes some techie security guys believe that you just need to run with some tools to run vulnerability, but at the back of it, there's a lot of things. You just mentioned critical thing, right? The patching
Yeah,
process, which is a lot of change management structure behind it, that
exactly.
it
Yeah.
is completely different from what we're used to, because even the administrator cannot just go and patch a particular critical system. They have to inform the right business users and all of that. So that talking about that is critical for you to know that this is the way you can organize a successful cloud vulnerability management program. If I give
I,
you
yeah.
from everything we've mentioned, which one do you think has been the most challenging for you, especially your experience?
I think from my experience is getting all the necessary, not necessary, like maybe I should put it this way, getting the necessary process mapped out for the cloud management. So when I say
Mm,
what I mean by that is getting also the stakeholders to be
yes.
involved in the process. So you have different stakeholders, and a stakeholder can be management, can be operational as well. So for me, I would always say getting, first of all, the operational guys to say, okay, this is the cloud environment we're operating in. What happens when this happens? This is what you're supposed to do from an operational perspective. When I do a vulnerability management, when I do a vulnerability scan, you should be able to say, okay, I need information from you, and I need you to feedback to me why this vulnerability still exists. The whole process needs to be agreed, because if you as a security personnel are doing the scans and don't have, like I said again, process, if you don't have people that are going to revert back to you, or don't know the process for cloud management, then that's a problem. There are different people, different skills when it comes to the cloud environment. So those people need to be tied into your vulnerability management process for you to be able to get feedback. This is not talking about escalating to the stakeholders, but from an operational perspective, whatever you're doing as a vulnerability management must have been also agreed or carried along. You need to carry along the operational people, as well as, again, like I said before, the escalation should be aware that when it comes to them means people in operations are not giving you feedback. So that's one key area I think, for me, I always find tricky, trying to ensure that people know the reason why you're doing the scans, why they need to respond to you, because obviously you're trying to secure the environment from malicious attackers or intent.
Absolutely.
Well, how about you? How about you?
For me,
Okay.
apart from that process that you've mentioned, which is also that's the biggest thing. Uh, the second one that for me wrapped around is actually identifying all the assets.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
easier said than done. Asset inventory, asset management in the cloud can actually, even on premise, is difficult enough. Now
Yeah.
in the cloud,
True.
when you don't even own a particular part of the spectrum, you can easily have server sprawl,
Yeah.
cloud
I agree.
sprawl, because now is a time of multi-cloud, right? So that
Yeah.
means, in essence, you probably have different things in different cloud environment. So
But is this not where, because from my experience as well, is like I think the cloud service providers are doing a fantastic job in getting should I say features that allow you to do asset inventory, and they do it. Some of them are doing it better than others, and I think, like I said earlier, every security personnel should try and ensure their CSP provides them with an asset inventory that lets them know what's in the environment. And you also have to tie it down to what the operations or people within that cloud environment are working. And so if something is being reported as an instance within your environment and nobody owns it, it's on the blacklist. It's
absolutely,
shut down.
absolutely,
So that's why I said always carry the operations people, or the not just the operations now, development, everyone. So try and get them to work with you, because once you're able to tie down what you know what to protect. That's for me. So I agree with you, but I just wanted to say that the cloud service providers are they there some cloud service provide a very good asset inventory feature, and the
yeah,
security guys on the field out there need to take advantage of that feature.
yeah. It's critical because that is part the major vulnerability in the cloud. The largest is actually because of configuration drift. So
Yeah,
if you don't even know how to manage your configuration, if you don't even know what asset is what, how do you know how to even run that patch in
absolutely,
the first place? And
absolutely.
don't forget also why your cloud provider, for example, can give you your inventory on probably your assets like VMs and some networking tools. Don't forget that the application that you're running in those VMs, they are yours. You need to know what is
Mhm.
running on what kind of configuration is done, what kind of middleware is running on them. So some of these owners, you have to sit down and map it just like you do on premise. You do have a
Yeah,
configuration database that also needs to exist. And in multi-cloud, you need to find a way in which you bring everything together, that you understand what is in what cloud, what is in
and,
which cloud
yeah.
environment. So that's it for me.
Well, I think for me, I think we've covered, based on all my knowledge, everything that I can cover. I don't have anything in particular else to add. What about you?
No, nothing. Just appreciate the fact that we're able to look at different things. You can ask us questions. You can just send to juteam at justunsecure.com for additional questions that you have, or you can just place some comment on our YouTube page or on our Twitter,
Instagram.
Instagram.
Okay.
For our people,
Well, we're back. We took a summer break. We didn't go anywhere. We just took a summer break. Now we're back. You'll be getting more contents from us and more security updates from us.
absolutely.
So
Have a
thank
great
you
week,
very
guys.
much. Take care. Bye.